Hi guys, and welcome to a Hector Lecture Guide to the first phase of the Dragonsong Reprise Ultimate. This video is only going to cover the Vault phase, which is the very first phase of the fight. First, when starting this phase, you're going to actually have three bosses that you're dealing with. Sir Adelphil and Sir Grenau are going to be targetable immediately, while Sir Cherubart is a mage on the outside of the arena and is untargetable. Immediately have each tank pull one of either Adelphil and Grenau and pull them to the middle of the arena. Try to stack them as tightly as you can. The first thing that happens is Sir Adelphil casts Holiest of Holy. This is a hard-hitting raid-wide. It usually requires at least one mitigation. Next up, Sir Grenau is going to start casting Empty Dimension, which is a donut or dynamo-shaped AoE centered around him. And at the same time, Adelphil is going to tether a random player with a tether that needs to be picked up by a tank. Have your tank currently tanking Adelphil pick up the tether and drag it to the rest of the side while everybody else stacks near to Grenau but behind Adelphil. The donut AoE will go off at about the same time that the tether disappears. Be aware that when the tether disappears, that tank is stunned, meaning that any cooldowns or invulns that they want to pop before this need to be popped before the stun hits or they won't be able to. At the same time, Sir Cherubart, the mage in the background, is going to start casting Heaven's Blaze, which is a stack that's going to be centered on the other players, so just have your rest of your party stacked. Be aware that the tank buster does cleave, so that tank needs to be opposite the rest of the party. The stack also hits heavily, so either shield this or mitigate it. Next up, Adelphil is going to leave the arena, and Sir Grenau is going to cast Hyperdimensional Slash and target 4 random players. These 4 players need to spread on one side of the arena. My group picked north. If you use the waymarks as I've got positioned here, your players can just stand on the waymarks. Everybody else needs to be stacked on the opposite side of the boss because they're going to get hit with a proximity-based cleave. That cleave does shared damage, so everybody needs to be stacked up. If you're positioned like this, all 4 of the players that were marked get hit by line AoEs, and portals spawn at the edge of the arena where they are. It's very important these portals are not positioned too near to each other, because if they are, they will tether and explode, causing massive damage, likely wiping the party. They also need to not be too near to the cardinals for a later mechanic. As soon as this first wave goes off, the roles are now reversed. The 4 players that were stacked are now targeted with the markers, and they need to go to their waymarks on the south side of the arena, while everybody in the north is going to stack up. Both hits do pretty heavy damage, so make sure you heal up in between. Immediately afterwards, you need to find where Adelphil lands. He's going to pick a cardinal around the arena, and you need to find where he spawned. Grenau is going to cast Faith Unmoving, which is a knockback, while Adelphil is going to start casting Holiest of Holy. Have your entire group positioned near to Grenau, ready to get knocked back opposite Adelphil. You can knockback immune this, but it's not necessary. Make sure that you position your knockback that you get knocked directly cardinal. Otherwise, if you're too near to any of those portals, they'll tether to you and kill you. Immediately afterwards, Adelphil is going to pick a direction to dash to. It's going to be one of his sides. Wherever he dashes to, this is the side the whole group wants to move to. Make sure that you stay away from the portals on the edge, and dodge in between the 2 waymarks on that side. Adelphil will continue to dash around. At the very end, your main tank needs to move away from the party, because Adelphil is going to drop down on top of them, doing a cleaving tank buster. This just needs light mitigation. This doesn't hit as hard as the others. After all of this has gone off, assuming you're all alive, pull both bosses to the middle. Be aware that while this is happening, Adelphil will try to cast Holiest Hallowing, which is a heal on himself. Just interrupt this. There's going to be a few of these throughout the fight, so make sure that you plan out who amongst your tanks and your physical range are going to get each interrupt. Next up is a tricky mechanic. This is what most groups are calling PlayStation chains. All these markers are showing you who's about to be chained to who, and Sir Grenau is going to cast a knockback, which will help us to actually break these chains. We need to make sure that matching pairs are opposite each other, but at the same time, Sir Cherubart's casting Heaven's Flame, which is a spread that hits very wide. As a result, we all need to have the same symbols opposite each other, but the whole group needs to be spread well enough. There's a simple way to do this. First off, be aware that what symbols you can get is fixed based on your role. Tanks can only get X or square. By having the waymarks like this and having the tanks pre-positioned northeast, all the tanks do is match their color. They're going to find which waymark they're matching color with their symbol to, and they're going to go there. The healers are going to only ever get triangle and X. They're going to pre-position in the south, and now similarly, they're going to match waymark. There's no green waymark, so we have to use our imagination here. Triangle is going to be going to the yellow waymark, but in this case, they swap over, and this will mean that X's are directly opposite each other always. DPS have it the trickiest. They can either get square, triangle, or circle, and you're guaranteed to have 2 circles on DPS, assuming everyone's alive. For the most part, DPS are just matching colors with waymarks, but one DPS needs to flex across. This can either be done with a callout or a priority system, with melees in physical range being prioritized to move across over casters who would prefer to stay still. Either way, don't actually go to your waymark. Before the chains appear, you need to be tight in, preferably inside the hitbox. Shortly after the chains appear, the knockback will send you flying and should knock you far enough to break the chains. Still, use this time to adjust closer to the cardinals and the edge of the arena to spread out even further to make sure that you don't clip each other with the very large spreads. The tanks are going to get chased by the bosses, and Sir Adelphil will try another Holiest Halloween. I recommend having your tank be the one responsible for interrupting this, as your physical range might be too far away at this point. Pull the middle, and everything from this point onwards is pretty simple. Adelphil's going to cast a Holiest of Holy raid-wide. At the same time, Sir Grenell will either use Empty Dimension or Full Dimension. If it's Empty Dimension, this is the same donut as before, so heal and mitigate through the raid-wide while stacking near to Grenell. If instead you get Full Dimension, this is just a very small out or chariot. It's not very large, just go out far enough. If you're outside of the diamond that he's positioned in the middle, you're probably far enough out. All that's left is one more Holiest Halloween to interrupt, and finally, one more Holiest of Holy raid-wide. It's very important at this point that you check the health of the bosses to make sure that you keep them similar, because as soon as one boss dies, the other is going to start casting its Enrage. If they manage to get this off, they become invulnerable and your party's going to wipe. You need to make sure that immediately after you kill the first one, you kill the second one, because you've only got about 2-3 seconds before the Enrage goes off. If you manage to kill both in time, now all 3 of the bosses are going to appear over on the side of the arena. The Mage is now the only targetable one, and they're going to start casting Pure of Heart. Pure of Heart hits for incredibly high raid-wide damage, but does less damage the lower the HP of the Mage. So our goal is to try to burn the Mage down as quickly as we possibly can. We do not need to kill the Mage. If the boss is below 30%, you can survive with heavy mitigation, though 20% makes this an easier job. During this, Adelphil is going to be casting Passage of Arms. Grenell is going to home gang everybody, so you can't go further than this. And there's other things that are also happening, but aren't important for this phase. So I'm going to remove most of the extraneous things so that we can focus just on the one major mechanic for this. There's constant tick damage, but otherwise there's only one mechanic. Throughout this, periodically, Sir Cherubart is going to cleave the 2 closest players. This cleave hits incredibly hard, and because there's tick damage, you need to make sure that you shield your players and are healing constantly to make sure that everybody has enough health to survive these. When the players are hit, they get this debuff here. After 4 seconds, they're going to drop a puddle where they are, but this can be dodged by moving out. We have our healers take the first ones, and they're just going to go far away from the boss to drop their puddles, while melee's positioned to take the second cleaves. When the debuff gets to 0, the melees will get hit by their cleaves, and the healers now need to immediately move because the puddle's going to drop where they just were. Melees can drop their puddles close now. This is why we alternate healers and then melees. While ranged have positioned, melees now rotate and healers go far so they don't stand in the melee's puddles, and tanks take the last one. While you can do this technically in any order, for later in the fight, it's really important that you have done tanks near to the end, and preferably healers near to the beginning. Right about here is when the boss is going to lose its purple circle and start to finish its Pure of Heart cast, mitigate this heavily, and hopefully at least one player is alive. If that's the case, congratulations. The stage will transition, Thornton's going to land, and you have reached the next phase, and most importantly, an ultimate first, you get a checkpoint. From this point onwards, this is where you will start the fight. Anyways, I hope this guide is useful to you and helping you get a clear on the first phase of the ultimate. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section if you've got any tips or suggestions or improvements to these early week 1 strats. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.